Amos 9 and 7 says, "To me, O Israelites, you are just like the Ethiopians, declares the Lord."
The Ethiopian, we know, was the common law wife of a man who brought her from West Africa, to the Netherlands, and considering the traffic, probably she was from Ghana, what we now call Ghana, and we know that she died in Amsterdam in her 28th year. The Second World War, which needed national unity, which also reached out to black people, but sought to tamp down the differences between the European races still. And so it's from that moment in the 40s that you get Negroid, Caucasoid, and Mongoloid. So there are races, but they're not the ones you thought. And then just as important is the GI Bill, which was administered locally on purpose. So it meant that in the South, local elites could white line it. Some black GIs were able to take advantage of it, but proportionally not very many. So that really gave the children of the alien races an economic step up. And then the Veterans Administration and the FHA's lending policies, which until the Fair Housing Act allowed for racial discrimination. So the new suburbs of the post-war era, like Levittown, were for whites only, but they put together Jews, Irish, Italian, Slavs, everybody together in the name of whiteness. And they were like 99.99.99% white. I said that it's taken on a life of its own in the United States in a way that it has not in other places, but the Europeans did use the word white. So for Linnaeus, for instance, I mean, these are people who were writing in Latin, I should say, but for Linnaeus in 1758, he had 4 different groups of people and designated them by territory. So there were Europeans, Africans, Asians, and Americans. And then when he talked about what it was about them, he listed white, and he also listed temperament. In the 18th century with Blumenbach, later on in the 18th century with Blumenbach and his 5 races, they still have a geographic basis, but part of what makes the word Caucasian, and Blumenbach was the person who applied it to Europeans. Why he used that word was because white people were the most beautiful people in the world. Aren't you glad to know that? What I find so amazing are the people who propagate these things are just ordinary looking people, you know, and I had to look and look and look to try to find Caucasians and Circassians and Georgians who are supposed to be the most beautiful people in the world, when it turns out it's really Hungarians. But to find images of them, and when you find images, well, the first images you find of Caucasians are really old people who eat yogurt and live a long time. So anyway, it's based on beauty. I think we are more class-driven now than back in the 20th century. But I think the relationship of class and race in one person's or one neighborhood's experience really has to do with that neighborhood and that experience. So I don't think there's any one answer. You remember, we're 320, 30, 40 million people. So there's no one answer. But one thing is clear, and that is that race does still count. Yeah. Yeah, that's a big issue. And if I were up to writing forever, or another book, it might be interesting to see to what extent the pattern of Jewish discussion of the assimilation, cultural plurality has shown or has gone the way that black people might go. I don't know. I think it'll be really, really interesting. But what I did remember, well, you probably don't remember, but I said very quickly that calling Jews a race if you were not Jewish, because there is a discussion among Jews as to whether or not Jews are a race. And some people say yes, and some people say no, and some people say, well, yes, but don't talk about it, and some people say no, but don't talk about it, so that is not a settled question among Jews. What I see in the literature is generational shifts. So that people who are my age, born in the 40s, might have a sense of kind of being both Jewish and American, but not wanting to buy into white American completely. But then children being more comfortable with being white and also more prone to marry out. And then their children being even more comfortable as white. And sometimes if they have, say, one Italian parent and one Jewish parent, they will go around saying, I'm Italian, kiss me, because the idea of being Italian is to be sexy and cute. So I see it changing over the generations. I can't generalize for everybody of every age, and it's a big enough generalization to do it just by generation. Antiquity. I did decide to go back to antiquity because I felt I needed a longer running time, because it was very clear to me, for the reasons you mentioned about Blumenbach, that there's a big backstory that's European. So I have a chapter on Germain de Style, who almost moved to the United States. They said, you wouldn't like it here. You would not like it here. But so I needed to do some European stuff, and the race thinkers in Europe tended to be pretty reactionary, in a whole part of the book that is not there has to do with Greeks, ancient Greeks and Germans and Jews, actually. It was a big theme in European race thinking, connecting the ancient Greeks to the Germans, and then the Germans get connected to the Saxons, to the English, and to the Americans, and so forth. But over and over again, I saw people making arguments about permanence and about, and to prove permanence, going back to the ancient Greeks. So I went back to the ancient Greeks.